Hey, what's up? This is Kevin from Kevin's Barbecue Joints, and this one's a great one. It's with Fort Guerin. He lives in Washington, D.C., as well as West Virginia, and he's one of my favorite artists, and I'm really, really excited to have him on the show. It's about an hour, so I'll try to keep this a short, brief intro. I think you're going to really enjoy this because he's so open about everything. He's open about his process. He's open about his materials. He's open about why he uses those specific materials. We are definitely kindred spirits, and this is a fun discussion. So part of this is us chatting and exploring different ideas. So I hope that you like that component of what this is. And also it's interesting because his path is quite unique. And when he moved to Washington, D.C. with his wife, he got a job carpet cleaning, and I'm not going to blow it for you because it's interesting to listen to, but where he did carpet cleaning is quite amazing, and there's a lot of interesting stories that revolve around that. If you're listening to this on the podcast side, I'd recommend going to the YouTube side or going to WV Guerin. It's Guerin. I'll have a link in the show notes below to check out what he does, and I'll have a little montage at the beginning of this because he has spectacular work and it's a lot of fun, and he puts pieces up for sale a few times a week. Just go to his Instagram, link off of that, and in the mornings generally they're on sale and they sell out really quickly. So just keep checking back if you are interested in his pieces. One great takeaway, and it's something that I've heard from other craftsmen and artists, is to keep your day job and work on what you're passionate about at night or mornings or whenever you have time. And he gets into why that's important. And also too, how Instagram has given him an opportunity. And so if you're an artist or photographer, it's giving him an opportunity to sell his pieces and get his pieces in front of people that wouldn't have existed without social media. So for all the negatives about social media, this is a huge positive. I'd be remiss too if I didn't thank Kelly Endell, the photographer and writer, because unbeknownst to her, she posted some stuff about him, and that's why I got interested in his work and I purchased some work and we became friends. So sit back, relax, enjoy this conversation with Fort Guerin, and make sure to stay safe and visit your local barbecue joint or local gallery.
We've got 4 German Shepherds, and then the rest are just random, a little beagle that we've gotten from the animal shelter here. We just took on a little blind dog that my wife saw at the shelter, and we're like, oh.
Do you have to be an alpha around the dogs?
My wife falls, if I have to go somewhere, which I very rarely do, she gets nervous about it because she's like, I can't handle them. Mm-hmm. It's different with me. I'll yell, I'll raise the voice, kind of thing, and they seem to be a little more. She's like, they don't do that when I'm here by myself.
Do they do with the 4 German Shepherds? Are they all kind to each other?
Yeah, we have one cattle dog.
Okay.
And she's full of piss and vinegar. She's the troublemaker, is the little cattle dog.
I think that cattle dogs in general are kind of mischievous.
It's in there. It's just in their DNA. I mean, they literally nip at cattle like that. If that's what you're bred for,
yeah, that's
and
true.
if you're like 60 pounds and that's what you're bred for, you better be ready to like rock and roll.
Yeah, no, I grew up with Shetland sheepdogs, and they always tried to herd people. Mm-hmm. That was something that they always. That's just in their nature. It's in their DNA, like you said.
And they're nippy. They nip to herd, mm-hmm. And she'll mix it up with one of the other female German Shepherds every now and then.
Oh,
you're just
that's like amazing.
That's not good.
Well, that's an interesting tidbit. Well, good morning, Ford. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
That's wild. That's interesting. Now, so first off, I want to clarify: is Fort your real name? Is that your given name?
Yes, that's a family name. I'm the third, actually. Grandfather, great grandfather, skipped my dad, so technically not the third, but that's what it says on my driver's license. So
I was almost the third. I was almost Lawrence Reynolds Kelly the third, because my dad's a junior. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of those family names are different. So Fort is a very unique name. How did that come about with your?
I just have no idea that what most people think it's Ford.
Okay.
When they first meet me, but it's
cool.
I've yet to come across another person with that name. So
doesn't it kind of fall in line with what you're doing? It seems to sort of make, I don't, it feels right for what you're doing. I don't.
Well, I can remember my folks asking me like in third grade, they're like, "Do you want to go by your middle name?" Because Fort is close to fart. And I got teased
Oh,
a little bit.
kids, yeah, kids.
And I was like, no, no, I'm fine with it. And now, I mean, now unique names are much more common than they
Hmm.
were, when we were growing
Yeah,
up
exactly.
in the 70s. There were a
Yeah.
lot of Erics and Matts, and there were
Mike's,
no Forts.
Mike and Steve, and it just seems like
Yeah.
even Kevin was a pretty common name in the 70s. It's amazing how many people, like, yeah, within that certain group of names are all the same name. But now, how do you pronounce your last name?
Guerin.
Guerin. Okay,
Yeah.
and it's spelled so people, I guess.
Guerin.
And is that
So
what is that? Is that
it's French.
French? Yeah, that's what it sounds
Yeah.
French. Okay,
So
all right. And you were born in Missouri, but you grew up in Arizona just for a little,
I grew
or?
up in Arizona, in Mesa, Arizona, east of Phoenix. When we moved there, it's small in the 76. So
Mhm.
that's pretty much where I grew up. About 22 years ago now, we've moved back to the East Coast.
Why did your parents move to Arizona? The
Great
desert?
grandfather lived there, and he had visited, once or twice to see his grandparents. And my dad took a job. My dad actually ran the housekeeping here at Johns Hopkins
Oh,
in Baltimore, and took a job to run the housekeeping division of Phoenix Baptist Hospital.
oh wow.
So we loaded up a little Datsun with a little plastic shell on the top, and,
Uh,
and like drove across country.
Living there left an indelible impression on you, and then you went to school in Flagstaff, right?
Yes, up in, northern Arizona. Yeah, growing up in Mesa at that time, it was still a lot of cotton fields and orange groves,
Oh,
that have all been sold off now and turned into, you know
homes,
developments and everything. But we
resorts.
used to be able to just drive out into the desert. I had a
Oh,
Jeep in high school. We used to just be able to go play around in the desert.
how cool is
Um,
that?
it
It,
it was great. I mean, where my parents' house sits now, we used to just drive up on the hill and like watch the lightning storms roll in
oh,
at night. And
that's
now
it.
it's all track homes
Yeah,
now
so that's
and
so
golf
it's so sad.
courses.
But the desert is magical, and it's a lot of people don't leave their bubble in general. But when I do go out to the desert on occasion, it feels so different. There's something magical, and the temperature changes so differently. It could be really, really hot during the day, and then it gets really cold at night. It's
Yeah, I had a friend. She worked at an ad agency, so a lot of folks would come out from make the move from the East Coast,
Mhm.
and they were like, what is this? They were like, it was flying onto the moon's surface. If you're not used to that,
Mhm.
if you come from, like New Jersey or something, where the green and trees and grass and seasons, and then you land in Phoenix and it's just brown for miles.
For a mile. And it's hard to believe that anything could survive. It's amazing that things can survive in the desert, and that plants have adapted to survive, and animals and bugs and creatures. It really is
Yeah, it's a
fascinating.
different. Yeah, I miss it. I get back about 2 or 3 times a year.
Mhm.
I would love to live back there, but I just can't. The wife didn't like the heat, and
Yeah, yeah. No,
I
and
couldn't
it's
convince
yeah,
her.
you guys, and you've adapted. Your life makes sense now where you are.
Yeah,
And your parents, you had said when we had spoken before, your parents live in Arizona
they're,
still, right?
yeah, they're still in Mesa. My brother and wife with their two daughters. One of them's actually just started up at NAU now, so
Oh.
it's funny how it all kind of goes full circle.
It is weird. And
And
Flagstaff is different, right? Isn't it more? Is it that's a higher
it's
elevation? They get snow, right? Isn't
Yeah,
I think
you're about 7,000 feet up there elevation, and snow, pine trees, little ski resorts up on one of the mountains close to Flagstaff. So
yeah.
it, Arizona has just pretty much, and California is kind of the same way,
Hmm.
where you just have a little bit of everything.
Hmm.
Um, California is obviously a lot bigger than Arizona, but you can you can go from low desert to high desert, and
Yeah.
within a day.
I think I went to a concert in Flagstaff. Does that make sense? But I maybe an outdoor concert or something? Is that?
Could have been. Could have been.
I don't know. It's because it might have been. I'm just. This is a long time ago in college.
We're gonna
Back in.
start dating ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. This was in the 30s. No, but it felt like it felt like a long time ago. But now, when you went to school, you got a bachelor's in fine arts,
Fine
right?
arts, emphasis in sculpture. I had originally, I was at ASU for 2 years and started in the photo department there at ASU.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And that was a little more like fine art creative. And then when I went up to NAU, it was a little more traditional kind of landscape. The guy that ran the photo department. So I switched over to the sculpture department.
Okay.
Um, and that was my emphasis, was in sculpture. And then quickly after college, I found out you need a lot of equipment and space and stuff to continue to make sculpture.
Yeah. So were you modeling or were you throwing clay or all of
I
it?
No, I was doing just all kinds of different things, building things, incorporating some paintings into like three-dimensional works and
Okay.
of that nature. Like my final show that I did, like my little graduate show, was they were these big, probably anywhere from 2 feet to 5 foot, like walking figures. They were made out of rebar, and then they were covered
Oh, cool.
with plaster and gauze to give them big feet and big hands. And so that was way different from what I'm doing now.
But did you always know that were you always sketching and doodling and
I
drawing?
Yeah, I was an art nerd in high school, and when took photo and drawing in high school, and was in the photo club.
That's good.
And it was funny. I was just telling my wife that the new book came out on Peter Beard, the photographer
Yeah.
that makes the crazy journals.
Yeah.
And so it came out, and I'm like, oh, I got to get this book. And I was explaining to him, to her, and I was like, I can remember seeing a piece. It was either on 60 Minutes or something. I can't remember exactly. Like in high school, about him and his journals, and I started making these little collage journals.
It was
And
a
so
good outlet.
it had always been my dad. My Fort Guerin II was a newsreel photographer in Chicago for NBC.
Ah,
So he traveled a lot, and he went on a safari in like 1954
okay.
as the photographer for this safari for a rich guy from St. Louis. And they shot a film, like it was through like the American History Society or something. And so it had always been kind of in the background. My dad would sit out and do pastel drawings of sunsets in Arizona.
Oh.
So art was always kind of like kicking around in my family.
But was it something where your parents said you should also have a business degree, or you should have some sort of
Started.
Yeah, because I went to San Diego State for writing, and so my parents were like, "You make sure you get like a language or something else." Yes.
Yeah, I was bad at school. I started off at ASU, and I swam there. And they're like, you need to just get your basics and think about like maybe a business degree. And then I failed miserably. So they were like, all right, go do your art thing, and maybe you'll stay in school.
And you did. You ended up. So then,
Barely.
But what was your trajectory then? Did you meet your wife in school?
No. But I met her through my brother. They were in grad school together.
Okay.
So that's how we met 20, 22, 23 years ago now. So
But you didn't go straight into painting, and you weren't painting the way you paint now, right? How do you get to where you are right now? How does that?
After college, I moved out to San Diego, actually.
Oh.
Because everyone from Arizona wants to live by the ocean and be a surfer. So I moved to San Diego, lived by the beach, and would just surf and paint for like half a year.
Where in San Diego?
Down in Tourmaline in Pacific Beach.
Pacific Beach, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I rented a little garage studio, a little 1-bedroom kitchenette, off of the alleyway.
Yeah. It's wonderful down there. It's actually like
it was great. I mean, all I did was I painted and surfed, and then I did actually apply for like the master's program. I put together kind of a weird painting portfolios back when you used to send in your little slide sheets and your artist statement. You have to mail it in,
Oh, that's funny.
kind of thing. So that didn't pan out.
What did your work look like then? What were your paintings, and what
I
medium
was
were you?
doing a lot of I was using these like true crime photos, like mug shots, and I was actually still doing like the kind of the dry brush method that I do now.
Mm-hmm.
So they were very, subject matter is completely different, but the same kind of technique. I had to teach myself to paint. I still can't paint really well. Um,
Really? I think
yeah,
people would.
I'm just not. And so I it's kind of like you look at some of the guys, you're like, oh my god, they're so great with the way they render and oil. Mark Mangiori and Logan Maxwell. These guys that are like at the top of
Yeah.
their game right now, and I'm like, oh, I can't paint like that. So you just got to like every now and then I would break out an oil set over the years and be like, okay, this is the path, and then I'd be like, I just cannot paint like this.
Is it because of the time, that the drying time, or is it just the detail, or is there a
The
certain?
It's both. I don't have the technical skill
Mhm.
or and I work very fast, so it's a little bit of both, and then I just ultimately end up going back to what I know and just work with that.
But were you using watercolors back then?
No, I've always used the cheapest material.
It's called tempera paint, right?
Yeah, it's the same. It's
I
the
because I bought some. I bought like a set of them, because I know there's the dry kind, but I got some of this. But you have the dry
yeah,
one.
no. These are like the little cakes.
Yeah, where do I get those? Can I get those on?
Off
I'm
of
sure
You
online.
get them off Amazon.
Okay,
I'll send you the link.
please do.
Um,
Yeah, I'll put the
and
link below for other people too.
yeah, the tube ones or those that's the stuff they give like the kids, and
Yeah, this felt like very, yeah, like it was like
and,
almost
and
like
you,
a kit for kids.
yeah, you can't build it up. These ones you can use kind of the same as watercolor.
Mhm.
You can use them real thick, or you can water them down and get more of a wash. I always do them really thick, and they give like kind of a comic book feel
Yeah,
when you're painting. So I've gone where I go, okay, I'm going to get canvas and expensive acrylics and whatnot, and it just never
it's not
works out.
cheap actually. Because I paint with acrylics just for fun,
Oh,
just to
yeah.
get my head out of my life. And it really like a lot. It's expensive because a little doesn't go a long way. It seems like
No.
you have to layer it, and then all of a sudden you realize like you're spending hundreds of dollars on paint. Yeah.
Yeah. These things are literally $20 for a tray of them, and
Okay.
they'll last me forever. And then I just use these little cheap, like
Smart.
$25 for like 20 of these little brushes for that dry brush where
Because you can
um
go crazy with brushes too.
oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's like feels like almost, I hate to say it, it feels like a racket. There's like a whole. It does feel like if the brush companies and the paint companies, they make a lot of money. I hope they're not watching this and they'll get
It's
upset. But it's you
it's
get.
crazy. So I've always just used cheap material, and it's worked for
Yeah.
me. And then with the paper, when I was cleaning carpets, we would the area rugs, we would wrap them in butcher paper to deliver them back to the clients,
Mhm.
and I would just tear off big sheets of that and take those home and paint on those.
Yeah, and that's the medium that you use now, right? That's
Yeah. Yep.
and so, but it feels like, because I've received a piece already. It feels like a thicker butcher paper, or do you?
Yeah, it is the one you got went through a coffee wash
Okay. Oh,
of
interesting.
like of instant coffee,
I didn't
because
know
it
that.
kind of has a texture to it, and I use really thick paper. I just order it from Uline, like a big
Hmm.
spool of it for like $150, and it lasts me. And I cut it down to size and run
Yeah.
it through a coffee wash.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's smart. And then you paint on top. So when you describe dry brush, what does dry brush mean?
Literally, it's fairly dry. I'm holding a brush in my hand. That's why I'm looking down. It's fairly dry. A lot of times I'll just lick it and put it on the thing,
Have you
and it
have you
just
have you licked it with paint on it on accident?
yeah. Well, it's just the no, it's just the tempura paint. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
it's egg based, that tempura.
Is it? And it says, are there different types of tempura paint? Like it seems like it's not tempura like that. So I'm
Not like the
mispronouncing it.
food.
Yeah, it's
No,
not the food. It's tempura. Okay, the
it's tempera. Yeah, and
okay.
it's one of the
It's
like
one
the
of the
oldest
oldest, right?
painting grounds that they've used, and it's primarily made with. I think they use egg as like the binding agent in it, because yeah, and that like that the bottle you have. If you let it sit in the garage for a while and then open it up, you'll be like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, that smells kind of stinky." Um,
Interesting. It doesn't even say what the ingredients are on it. It's yeah, obviously
it's
it's not edible, but it
mainly
is.
water.
So they are. Yeah, it's actually just water with food coloring. But it's that. So kids. So is that what we all use when we were kids, painting at
Yeah,
school?
the same stuff. Yeah, remember like when you would like in kindergarten, you
Uh-huh.
just get out the big buckets of paint and you'd open them up and you'd be like, "Oh, these
Yeah.
stink."
Yeah. Okay. I didn't
I
know
think
that was tempura. That's interesting.
it's the same. It's the same stuff.
Okay.
Um,
And there's online, like there's people I've seen. I googled it on YouTube. There are people like that'll teach, and it's mostly like seems like people teaching for a school or for a class. Like they're showing you how to do it. This
yeah,
is how I keep the kids in line when they and so because there's wet and then there's the cakes, the dry.
yeah, and there are people that do like super realistic painting. Like you can order it in a powder and like mix your
Oh,
own with like the egg yolk and everything, and be
oh.
very technical. Just the same as making like your own
Mhm.
oil paint, and just use like dry pigment and mix your own
You,
egg into it.
you don't
Like
have the
if
patience for that, do you?
no,
I don't think I did. I don't think I
I'm
would.
I'm I'm, I'm cutting giant sheets of paper off of spools.
This is cool though. This is great because I think that there's sort of a barrier to entry in people's minds for so many different things in life, and this is something that when did you really when did you actually start selling your work, and then how did was it always like 1940s 1950s kind of Western was that how did you get into that lane in your
It
head?
was so when my folks did have an art gallery in Scottsdale for 10 years,
Oh,
that they opened up. They had a successful janitorial service. When they moved to Arizona, they built up a janitorial service, and my brother moved back from DC and ran the gallery. And I had so many art friends.
oh,
They were like, let's open up a gallery in downtown Scottsdale where the galleries used to be. It's changed now a lot. So I would I and this is the mistake I think a lot of people make when they're when you're making art or when you're just getting started, is looking at a lot of other artists and you start imitating
yeah.
what other people are painting or what's selling. And I did a lot, I would look through New American Painter and be like, oh, and I did some stuff like that. I was working mainly like with 40s and 50s, like advertising, and it
Mhm.
really wasn't the cowboy stuff. And then when we moved out to Arizona, from Arizona to DC, that's when I started getting like real nostalgic or kind of homesick for the West.
Okay.
And there was a little comic book store in our neighborhood, and I went and I picked up I bought like all his cowboy comic books that he had there,
Oh, that's cool.
and I started using those. And then I got my neighbor knew a guy that owned a gallery in Austin, and he had just moved here from Texas to cover. He was a video website guy. He moved here from Texas to cover the he's now Senator Warner,
Oh, wow.
our senator. He was running for president at the time. He had been hired by the campaign for his presidential to be the videographer. So he moved from Austin, Texas, and he's like, my buddy would love your artwork for his gallery. So I just took a stack of papers of cowboy, drawings and stuff I had, and he's like, and this was Yard Dog Gallery in Austin, and he's like,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
he was like, I'll show your stuff. He's like, he loved it. And so then I just kept doing cowboy stuff because I was shown at two other galleries and they had shut down right around the time when like the bubble and the 2008 when that
Oh, it's
recession
around that
came.
time. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the galleries and the Austin gallery just kept chugging along because Austin, was still a destination for people to
Hmm.
go with the music and everything. So
Did it look like how it looks now, or was it?
it was very very similar. And then I started doing some of the real big ones with the writing in the back, like in the background, and that goes down a whole different rabbit hole of
Yeah, that
writing.
was
And
because you wanted to be a writer too, right?
I
Not that you
love
can't be now, still, but I mean, that was.
it's super difficult task
Mhm.
to accomplish.
But were you
Uh,
going into journalism, or is that the route that you thought you might be going into?
no, I, I, I love to read, and then I just love the whole thing of like the whole mystique of the writer and stuff. That you
Uh,
could just go and write. You
mhm.
didn't need paintbrushes. You could just go write somewhere and come up with a story. And I was a horrible, and I would always do, like I said, with Peter Beard, did those journals where he wrote all over them. And I
Mhm.
did some journal stuff like after college with writing and everything. And,
Like using
you
the
know,
words to create images, right?
yeah. And,
Mhm.
and doing these journals. And we all grew up on like Hunter Thompson and
Yeah.
everything, like the crazy, writer,
Mhm.
with the gonzo journalism and everything. So for some reason, like writing always had stuck in the back of my head, and I'd
Mhm.
be like, oh, I could write a short story. No, I can't really write a short story.
But do you feel like you have you ever put together pieces to create a story? Is that something that?
I was doing some stuff where it was a little more consistent with the text in the background. I was doing like a single image on like a piece of wood and then writing a story really small.
Really
So you
tiny?
you couldn't even see what it was unless you got really close to it and be like, oh my goodness, that's actual writing. I was shown with a gallery in Georgia. She hung little magnifying glasses so people could read my handwriting
That's
on
cool.
on the pieces. So at some point they did have stories, and then they became just so kind of just a part of the painting, and I was filling up bigger pieces, and a lot of just song lyrics, just kind of whatever I'm thinking about at the moment. I might start a little bit of a story or something, and it just rolls along for maybe a chunk of the painting, and then kind of
Changes the.
it changes, peters out a little bit, and then they'll get some song lyrics in there. And
So that's what's because I have a bunch of different notes to ask you. So then, is your process, because I'm assuming your process has sort of been the same. Do you listen to music while you paint?
I do music now when I'm doing like these stars where I've just kind of got I've got a Monument Valley that's sitting over here that's like 5 feet tall.
Wow.
That's a lot of star. Then I'll put like a podcast on or something just to.
Mm.
Sometimes with music you just get going a little bit too
Hmm.
much. It will just kind of get you ramped up depending on what you're listening to.
Like too much, like in a direction that you weren't interested in going.
Yeah, if I'm sitting down trying to remain focused and stuff, I'll go something a little like with the podcast or something, or just like some jazz music.
And I've noticed online when you show video of the stars, people are so fascinated, and they seem to ask us. There's a question that they always ask, like, how long does this take you? What is this? So when you're doing the stars, you do a portion and then you go to something else and then you come back, right? Or is that this?
Yeah,
And how?
yeah.
Okay,
The majority of
those
the
are really
time,
cool. Those are so cool.
yeah, it's the way I look at it a little bit. Like I said, I cleaned carpets for 10 years, and that was the same monotonous thing over and over again. If
Mhm.
if I because they're like, oh my gosh, you sit there and paint stars all day. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's better than cleaning carpets all day.
That's like the perfect takeaway. No, it's true. It's so true.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm here with the dogs.
Hmm.
I go get a cup of coffee, go to the gym or
Yeah.
whatever, and then come paint stars. And I'm not in a work van, you
Mm.
know,
Going to clean
shagging
carpet.
someone's carpet all day long.
But that's also, is that because you guys, is that something, does that harken back to what your parents, I mean, what they did back then? Is that how, like,
We
because there was
the,
a janitorial, you guys, because you said you had a housekeeping, he handled housekeeping for the hospital, right?
for the
So,
hospital, and then they started their own janitorial service
okay.
when we moved out to Arizona. He was still at the hospital and started this on the and office buildings.
Yeah,
So
there's a barbecue guy that did that he's in
okay,
Texas, but it's interesting how he built a giant business out of that and sold it.
yeah, well that's what my folk they had that business for 30 years.
Uh,
And I think at the height of their business, they had about 100 employees. So it was a
mhm.
big operation. And I was when I was back in Arizona, I was helping my parents with that side of the business, and my brother was
Okay.
running the gallery, and I was still painting in the evenings. And then when we moved to DC, we didn't have jobs at all. My wife was like, I just want to move back to DC. She had lived here for 2 years. So we moved back, and there was a job in the newspaper. This is when you look in the newspaper for jobs.
Think about,
And there's
yeah.
a
Imagine that.
Yeah, she was like, there's a job for carpet cleaning, and it was starting like at $40,000. And this was 20 years ago. She's like, that's what we need to make on your end so we can cover, the mortgage and everything. And I'm like, I'll take it. And now the funny thing is, it turned out to be a really interesting carpet cleaning job. We cleaned the White House, the vice president's residence.
What?
Yeah, all the wealthy people in DC. So it was a it was an interesting job.
What
So
was that like? This is fat. I didn't know that. I knew this would go down different tangents, but what was it like cleaning the White House? And
that we
do
would
you know the layout of, like, not that that's, but like, did you clean the entire White House?
yeah, I've been in the president's bedroom.
Wow. What's that
So
like? What does a president's bedroom look like? I'm sure it changes a little bit, but like
it was
nuance.
I worked during the Bush and Obama years.
Okay.
Obama's had children, so it was a much different vibe in the residence.
Uh-huh.
So have you ever done like the White House tour or anything like that?
I think I I went to DC with for school, but I don't think I think it might have been, it wasn't available. I also too got I got the stomach flu with like four other kids.
Oh,
We for
gee.
So we were like in the back of the bus, and I invited a friend from like the and he went off and he met a girl like on the trip, and I was like in the
Okay.
back sick with like four and five other kids. It was because, what's funny is too is there's these thing called whorehounds, which were root beer candies, and we got them at like Jamestown or
Uh-huh.
somewhere, and that was the last thing I ate before I threw up in the hotel room that we were staying. And because of that, now I can't have root beer at all. Like, that's something
Wow,
that
okay.
it changed my my life. I
I
can't.
can remember getting sick on fish sticks once like that.
Oh,
Like got the flu after eating fish sticks, and I used to love them. I can't touch them
yeah, no, I can imagine that. Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. But I haven't done the tour, but I've looked online at different, because I was writing a story, because I write on the side, and I was writing a story about the
Okay.
White House, and I was trying to figure out how things, and I've seen, like, January 6th, and they show like where everything is, like where things are located, but the residence is, because I also remember Jenna Bush talking about, there's like a thing where they would slide down some stairs, or they would do something. Is there, like, is residence up higher? Is that
So when you come into the White House, like on the bottom level is like a kitchen, and then off to the front side, like where the helicopter lands,
yeah.
are like the map room. There's three or three or four bigger rooms that are on that base level. And then there's also a library down there, which was my favorite room.
Oh, that's cool.
And all artists or all writers that came would bring like first editions of their books
Oh,
signed,
oh,
and it was a smaller room with like I can't remember if it had one or two fireplaces in it, and it was all like kind of floor to ceiling bookshelves.
oh, that's
And
so
when I
cool.
would, that was always my favorite room was that room with all the books in it on that level. And then the next level up is the kind of the public level that you see with the blue room, the red room, the green room,
Yeah.
and that big red hallway.
Yeah.
So that's the main level most people know. And then above that is the residence, and that's where they obviously live. And that's where
Is that where the
Lincoln.
balcony is and stuff?
Yeah, there is one balcony. Yeah, there's a balcony there, and then there's a balcony above that.
Okay.
And then the third or fourth level up is kind of like an atrium up there.
Oh wow.
That had like an exercise room and a pool room. It's a couple bedrooms here and there, but it's not as formal as the rest of the White House.
When you said there's a pool room, there's a pool inside.
No, a pool, like shooting pool.
Oh,
like when I think Obama had a pool table in there.
Okay.
It probably stays there.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of furniture. I would go in and clean the furniture like during the Christmas parties and stuff like that.
So you saw it decorated for Christmas and how they changed, and that's a big deal, I think.
That was a huge deal. And what was that was when we would be there the most, was during the holidays. Yeah. When they had the big parties. They have like 5 parties a day during the holiday season for like 2 weeks.
Crazy.
Like where like military families come in,
yeah, the gold star. There's the gold star stuff. Yeah,
it's all, and so and they're all catered, and people walk around the premise with cocktails and food in their hand, and they're touching all the furniture. They actually bring in different furniture.
Really? Well, that makes sense. That does make sense.
Yeah, for the parties, because some of the stuff's been there since the beginning of the White House. So it was an interesting job to say the
Wait, have you cleaned the Lincoln bedroom?
Yeah.
that's so weird. And you never saw ghosts at all?
I never saw the ghosts, and we were always escorted by the there's a department that's there on the premise. They take care of everything. They take care of the paintings on the wall, the furniture, just the interior. I mean, it's a guy would come in to crank all the clocks, once a year. They take the chandeliers down and clean all the crystals and everything. I mean, it's a
big operation.
It's insane how many people are on the premise and everything, and working and stuff, from Secret Service to just people that maintain, and then on top of the people that run the government,
all that too. Yeah, it's and then the press, and there's like
and I would always say when I would go there, because you check in at the gate like on 15th or Street, and I'm like, once you go through that gate, it's like time stops. You're like in a different world.
That's wild. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think you'll hear like the first families, they'll call it the fishbowl, I believe. Okay. It's a reference. They're like, oh, we were living in the fishbowl for 8 years. Mm-hmm. And it really is. It's like entering like a parallel universe almost. It's like you're there and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been here for 3 hours, and then you go back to the normal world.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And it's also probably a relief after they leave the White House, because even though there's still scrutiny, there's still media, it's a different, I can imagine your life it's and that's why they always go gray. You always see they age differently.
I can't even imagine. I mean, to imagine the stress of that job, and just being literally on call 24/7,
and making decisions that are, global decisions. It's
catastrophic things that you have to deal with. And and
the things that and the things that you have to deal with. Yeah. So we had talked before we had started this, how you worked in the evenings, you painted in the evenings. So that's something that I kind of want to touch on a little bit, is you had that job, and then you would paint in the evenings too, because the idea of a starving artist is something that's, when you're back in the Hunter S. Thompson days, like that, when you were thinking about that, it seemed glamorous, but you had to have a real job too.
Yeah, especially then, because there was no, like we were talking about before, it's changed a lot now. Mm-hmm. It was galleries. I mean, there were some coffee houses that were doing some stuff. There were some alternative venues, but and even then, with the gallery taking 50% of what you're selling, if you're in a group show once a year or a solo show once a year at a smaller gallery, you're if you're making
Hard to, yeah.
$10,000, you're lucky, and you could be a starving artist if that's all you were doing. But that never seemed appealing
No. So would
to
you
me.
paint
So
would you paint in the mornings too, or was it just in the evenings?
it was just the evenings. I would just go kind of through a little. I'd get home, go through a little routine, to go to the gym or whatever, and then just hop in the shower and then sit down to paint for a couple hours. And if it went longer, then you just got up and hopped back in the shower, went to work, and
Yeah.
and then the weekends I would just kind of on the weekends just have at it on the weekends. If I had a show coming up, I would take a day or two off and here and there.
Just to muscle through it.
Yeah. And it was also nice because you're not relying on it as income.
Because that changes things.
It totally changes things. And that was when I talk about like the inexpensive materials, that for me also changed things as far as like my process. Like if I was using something expensive, it would kind of like step back and be like, oh my gosh, this is a $20 acrylic tube of blue, and this is an expensive paintbrush. And it would kind of freeze up a little bit.
So this was a way to adequately express yourself because that certain pressure was off, I guess.
Yeah. You were like, I this has got to count. It would get into my head a little bit too much. Where with the cheap materials, if you're like, oh, all right, just put that one to the side. There's no big loss there.
Yeah. How did the social media, quote unquote social media, how did that come into play? Was that a couple years ago, or did a gallery show something? Or
I'd painted for pretty much since college, pretty much almost routinely every day. At one point, this was probably about 10 years ago now, I just stopped.
Oh.
I was like, I can't paint another cowboy comic. I was just kind of painting the same images over again. And I stopped completely for about 4 years. I went and joined the volunteer fire department.
Oh yeah. I have a note about that. Yeah, okay.
And that was something, there was always something ever since I'd seen like Backdraft when I'd been a kid. Like in the when it was like late 80s or early 90s, I can't remember. I'm like, I'm gonna be a firefighter. And I'd actually try to drop out of school at one point out of college. I'm like, I'm gonna be a firefighter. My parents were like, no, finish school. And so I was just done with paint. I was like, I cannot paint another cowboy. And I literally stopped. And then I came back to it, and social media was there.
Okay.
At that point, and that was a whole different thing. And I still show with a couple galleries, but I sell a good amount of stuff online.
Were you surprised when you started selling online that way?
It took a while to figure it all out. I mean, and when I first set up like my little shop and everything, I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be a game changer. And I'm like, this could be when I hit, enter to upload the first thing, I'm like, all right, I'm on my way. And you're like,
course,
no.
You got to do a little more effort. Yes.
Yeah, I'm like, I guess I'm gonna be cleaning carpets a little longer. Because it just doesn't. It took me a while to figure that out. But now was about 5 years ago. Okay. So now it's kind of just chugging along.
Solely on Instagram, right?
I was on Instagram. I would sometimes it like self-populates over to Twitter. Sometimes it doesn't. Nothing seems to really happen. Twitter seems to be more like news oriented, where Instagram seems to be more visual. I mean, you always wonder, okay, what when it goes away, what's going to be next?
Well, hopefully you'll have a client base by then,
Yeah, I need to
hopefully,
work on
like a
getting like
newsletter. Yeah.
an email list
Mhm.
together and all that. Where I'm sure you're probably the same with because do you drive a lot of people to your site through social media or
Yeah. Yeah, I do that, and I have a short list, and I also have just seems to be certain people that I guess have subscribed or look at my stuff enough. It took a certain amount of it's taken a lot of effort. It's taken eight,
it
9 years. Yeah.
it does. It's I mean
Yeah.
it's still when did you start doing the YouTube?
I think the YouTube stuff was 4 years ago. I think I started doing
Okay.
that. And then, but with the barbecue stuff I've been doing, he passed away 13 years ago. And a couple years before that is when I created like a barbecue joint search engine and I had things. So I was doing, so like maybe 15 years of being in the barbecue world. And
Hmm.
then I've kind of gravitated towards like barbecue and I guess or like people that are photographers and artists
Yeah.
and make like knife makers and different things. But I've that because that's my true passion. I don't want to be, even though like my name and my thing is Kevin's Barbecue Joints, and it's mostly barbecue world, but that's not. I don't want to be pigeonholed, I guess, in that. I don't want to just be the barbecue guy because I have a lot of other passions. But yeah, it's taken a long time, but now it seems to be as soon as I put something out, it seems to, and yeah, when I put stuff on Facebook, I don't put anything personal on Facebook. It's just the work stuff that I put on Facebook.
Yeah, I try to stay. I mean, I'll put a picture of the dogs up
Yeah, yeah,
every now and then, but I try to just keep it pretty even keel because it is a bit it's a business. I
yeah, yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you're trying to get people to your site to get eyes on your stuff. Yeah, you sell ads and stuff through your
Yeah, yeah, I have Google Ads and I do that. I have some affiliate stuff with Amazon and
okay.
different things, but I do it's mostly through Google Ads and for YouTube. YouTube is owned by Google, and so it's all that same. So that's how. And I do some marketing and stuff on the side. Like I still have a
Okay.
side kind of gig, but
Yeah.
I've been doing it all from home because I've been taking care of my mom. So
Yeah.
I can't go places, and so I'm sort of like building a base for when I do get a chance to travel. Then it
Like you said, the knife makers and stuff like people all these craftsmen and artisans and stuff, this we wouldn't have been able to make a living doing
mm,
this 10 years ago.
yeah.
Like if you were like, I'm a blacksmith and I'm forging knives, you'd be like that's great.
Yeah, it'd be like
You're like, I'm
your neighbors would know, maybe,
yeah,
your
maybe
local
some of your
people.
hunting buddies would
Yeah.
have some of your knives and stuff now,
Hmm.
but I mean people are making legitimate businesses.
Hmm.
I love vintage axes. It's one of my there's guys making a living like restoring old and hanging old vintage axes on new handles and stuff like that.
It's
Like
cool.
I it's so cool. The stuff like that stuff just like fascinates me.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
Um, a lot of times when I'm painting, I'll just like put on like a YouTube channel or something, and it's just roll on to the next one
Uh-huh.
and the
Yeah.
next one. It'd be like a guy restoring an old like outboard motor, and I'm like, this why is this so fascinating?
It's entirely fascinating. It's also
He's like just going to garage sales and getting old motors and like restoring them to like pristine condition
yeah,
again. I'm like, that's amazing.
because it's a window into what people are into, and it's fascinating what people are so obsessed with. I think that's so and obsessed in a great way, and it's interesting. There's a guy, well, the guy that I've interviewed, Sergio. He has Texas Sage Forge, and he uses all Texas woods, and the
Okay.
handles are all it's knives. He's a knife maker, and he has a forge, and he had it in his house. Now he has a garage, like but near his house, and he's pounding away at night, but he has these hammers and they're called, I think, peen or something. But these guys make these hammers, but they number them. There's small batch, giant,
Yeah.
beautiful hammers, and I'm like, it's like $300, and I want to like, I have it bookmarked, so one day can buy them. But it's amazing what people, but I would never have known about any of these people. And this guy he was a principal of a school, but at night he would forge.
Yeah.
That was his passion, and it's fascinating. It's amazing.
There's so many niche markets
Hmm.
like with I fish a lot and I did like a lot of fly fishing, like just people like just make like hand making like gear for whatever it might be, whether it's camping and stuff. Like we've gone back to this like it's labeled a maker
Hmm.
now, but like this craftsmanship
Yeah,
to
artisans and yeah.
yeah to building stuff, which I think it's fascinating to see it come back. My grandfather used to say, just wait 20 years and what I'm wearing right now will
Yes.
be in fashion from 20 years
Uh-huh.
from now. And that it always swings.
Hmm.
We go so far back we went with, oh, we're just going to buy everything off Amazon. And now we've
Hmm.
come all the way to the other side. And people are like, I'm going to spend $500 for this backpack that this guy hand stitched in
Hmm.
Montana for my camping gear instead of the REI.
Yeah. No, there's
It's really fascinating to see.
it's beautiful, and I think that's why people gravitate towards what you're doing, because it's so detailed, and you're showing like the stars, you're showing the process, and I think that social media there's all these terrible things, and we've talked off like line. There's horrible things about social media, but there's also so many wonderful things, and it's given like someone like you an opportunity to really show what you do. And I find it to be fascinating, and it's also it gives you an avenue to make a living. And I've tracked you kind of as before this interview. I was tracking, and it's things go up for sale, and then they're sold out within hours, right?
Yeah, and that's hit or miss sometimes too. Like
Hmm.
you'll just be rolling along and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't make these fast enough, and then it will kind of,
Yeah, like it's
and then you're like, oh my gosh, is it over? And then you'll do it
but
will
but there's certain things that you know now that will probably sell quicker than other things, right?
yeah, the stars always
Yeah.
go go quick. Like I've been doing a big star piece for the gallery in Lockhart because I started showing with Commerce Gallery in
Mhm.
Lockhart, and I had my first show a couple months ago with them, and
Okay.
I unfortunately couldn't make it out. But when I was telling my friends, especially one of the guy that used to live in Austin,
Okay.
he's like, "I'm coming out to get the barbecue," and he lives in New Jersey now. He'll order postwood. Is that
Yeah, Post Oak.
post oak for his barbecue when he barbecues up in Jersey?
Oh wow. What are all the different ways that people can get a hold of you? And then if people want to do something, like if someone wants to commission you to do something, is that something that you do as well?
It has to be like in the wheelhouse,
Okay.
and something happens when people ask me to do something. I don't know if that's we're just it just keeps getting pushed
Yeah.
down the line down the line.
But if someone has like if someone says I really love the cactus with the stars, some sort
Yeah.
of
Most people just DM me on
okay.
Instagram, and I'll be like, I'll give you a heads up when I put it up on
Okay.
the site. I don't take like money in advance, even if somebody asks me to do something specific. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's got to be kind of along my lines, and I'm like, listen, if you like it, you can buy it. If
Hmm.
not, someone else will buy it.
Gotcha.
So I try to stay away. I weird people ask you to do weird things. I have one guy like reach out to me, and he's like, "Do you do portraits?" I'm like, I'm a horrible painter." I'm like, there's people that do it way better than I do. That's literally what they do.
That's their
That are
yeah.
professionals. I'm like, I go, if you've seen my stuff, and then he just like starts sending me like all these pictures of his wife, and I'm like,
Oh.
I told you. I'm like, I don't know what you like. A lot of weird people out there.
Yeah, you probably get a different I get a lot of weird things. And actually my email address is on some barbecue joint in Atlanta on their Facebook page. So I
Uh
get
huh.
the weirdest requests, like my email. I have things that just the strangest things people ask for because they think I'm a barbecue place in Atlanta for some reason. And I've even
Okay.
called them and said, "Hey, change this." But you probably get some really odd requests, and like things
It
like
is.
like what's hanging behind you. Are those things that are just are for galleries and things, or is that
Oh,
like
well, that one's yours, hanging up there still.
yeah,
The big
yeah,
cactus
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. The blue
The
one,
other one's an old one. Those are some cactus ones that just
the
got
western thing on
grabbed.
the over your right shoulder. That western, that's a cool. That's the
That
blue, the
one's
one with the red. I could see the red writing. It says, yeah, there. Yeah.
over this. Yeah, that's an older piece. It has a tear in it,
Okay.
actually. So sometimes the coffee gets too thick and it will make the paper like
Oh,
hard and it will crack actually. So I'll probably do a little giveaway here to get rid
that's
of
cool.
that.
No, that's awesome. So what is your Instagram handle?
It's WV Guerin, Guerin.
I'll put it right there.
Yeah, because we've got a place up in West Virginia where I try to spend most time with all the dogs.
How do you put nine dogs in a car?
We've got a big Ford Expedition, and so the back area is fenced in with one of those, and they
Are
got their
they
dog beds in there. They just pile in. It's about 2 hours away, the place, so it's not like we're driving all
Yeah,
that far. We'll load them in the morning, and then it's 5 acres out there, so they can.
that's awesome.
Yeah, we won't have to. I mean, to have this many dogs in the city, and a couple of them are unfortunately at
Oh,
the end of the line. Two of the shepherds are 12 plus, so
yeah, yeah. There's
it's just the way.
that's a good age that they've gotten that.
We say any time over 12 years for a big dog
Mhm.
is bonus time. One of
Yeah.
them's 13 right now.
Oh,
He's laying down here by me right now,
oh,
but
that's
he
cool.
just turned 13, and we thought he was going to go like twice in the last year, and
What's his name?
Duke,
Duke.
and yeah, he's rallied.
Are they a pack then? Do they become like a pack?
Oh, it's a pack, yeah. Like I said, if somebody had come to the door while we were doing this, you would be like, "Oh my, what is going on there?"
Yeah, because I'm actually shocked that you have nine dogs and you haven't heard there hasn't been a bark. There hasn't been a single.
No, they got the smooth jazzes on in the front
Okay,
room, and the drapes are pulled shut tight.
that's
So
what it is. That's the trick. Smooth jazz for dog.
yes, the watercolor station on XM that my wife loves.
That's cool. Okay, I know that one. Oh, now, so then should I put a link then to your, is it Big Cartel, like to your store too? Is that, can people
I
check
think
their
yeah,
often?
the Instagram's probably the best way to go if
Okay.
you want to get in touch with me.
But also too, like if they want to see if something's up for sale,
Yeah,
go
yeah,
to Instagram. There's a link. You have a link off your
yeah. There's a
Instagram
link on there.
bio.
Yeah, yeah. The stuff's usually there's maybe 2 or 3 pieces that pop up, once or twice a week.
Okay.
When I'm in West Virginia, because I have to drive to the post office there, there'll usually be bigger drops of
Mm.
stuff, so I don't have to make that many trips because it's about half an hour to get to the post office from there.
Wow,
So
that's nice. That's like kind of off. Is it a place that you can go and get away from everything?
yeah, the grocery store is half an hour away,
Wow.
kind of
So
thing. So it's out there.
it's wooded, right?
Yeah, yeah, with a river right in front, where it's
Oh, that's
right down
nice.
the hill. So
Wow.
it's we're trying to get up there more. I'm up there quite a bit. Cecilia still has a city job, so
Yeah,
she
yeah.
comes up on the weekends. But I'm up there probably about 80% of the time now.
Wow, that's nice.
Um,
Now, I wanted to talk too about, so do you have a nostalgia for old monster movies?
I
Because you did like what were those weren't they like they were from old?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. It's mainly just like the old
Right.
40s, 50s, and I don't know, it kind of all rolls into that. We grew up in the same time period.
Hmm.
Star Wars was huge
Hmm.
for us, especially as kids.
Yeah, yeah, it's still, yeah.
Getting Star Wars toys and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that was my life.
yeah, I mean,
A big portion of it.
I can remember wanting to make little Star Wars, like watching how they made Empire Strikes Back
Oh yeah.
with like the zip lines and stuff like that. And
Uh-huh.
I
Like
can remember
hitting it
thinking like,
with a wrench and making that
yeah,
yeah.
I can remember like making little fishing line zip lines with an X-wing
Oh
fighter
yeah,
into like
yeah.
into a little swamp, and we'd let it go down the line, and we're like, we need to make a movie
Yeah,
with our
I think.
toys and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So I think it all stems kind of from that,
Okay.
and then going back marketing with like the old cowboy movies and the like Howdy Doody was on literally everything
Yeah,
from bread to God knows what,
that's true.
back in the day. So I just like all that kind of stuff, and the monster movies were definitely in that.
And those are good. Those are like you kind of I think in your head you don't think you're as good at drawing as you like. It's those the images are beautiful. Like, and I'll put links below. Is it okay if I in the montage if I put some
Oh
photos
yeah.
of all your stuff? Yeah, yeah. So there's some real because there's I think those are really neat and interesting. And but I don't know if they if those were those for a gallery that you did or were they
No,
for
those are just for just I mean I just go through
like phases.
yeah, if something's like interesting me, probably like you'll just be like, okay, like I said,
Yeah.
I got into vintage axes for a
Yeah,
while,
no, it's hard to yeah, it's
and then I'm just like, for like 3 months, that's you'll just be watching videos or ordering books on like lumberjacks and stuff like that from
yeah,
back in
right.
the day and
Uh-huh.
everything, and then you'll just kind of go on to your next
Yeah,
little.
I got into really into ceramics and watching people build like yeah, like it's like I think there was because there was pottery. I was watching people make pottery and oh yeah, there's so many and I think it was because there was a British pottery show that I got into.
Okay.
It was it was a contest. I don't love contest shows that much, but
the, have you watched? So there was. I love the British TV.
mhm.
It's very
I love no,
soothing for
I
some.
love British TV like so
I
much. Yes.
when I was painting on PBS on Saturday nights, they would have like Chef, the old British show Chef.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Are you being served? Like it was a whole like it was a whole British evening of like their
Hmm.
sitcoms. And I would every Saturday I'd be like, I'm gonna be painting and watching the British shows.
Yeah.
But there's a portrait painter one.
Oh, there is?
And, yeah. And it's a competition show, and they have like legit like
Oh, I've got to see that.
professional portrait. It's crazy. And then
Oh,
they paint the celebrities. There was another one I was watching.
because there's one that there's the something to the workshop or the repair shop. Have you seen the repair shop?
No,
That's on Netflix, and it's like it's got like it's the people bring in stuff, and then they have like a repair. They have it's these little cottages that they
Oh,
have these workstations, and then they'll work on like a clock. There's a guy who's really good at intricate clocks, and there's a
okay.
guy who's really good at like leather, or a woman that really is good at upholstery, and then there's a guy, and so they come in, or there's a guy that could do like welding and or blacksmithing, and so
So
they'll
they could just it's a
people
one
come in
stop
with like an
shop.
old doll or an old like
Okay.
car.
That's
Good.
on Netflix.
It's on Netflix, the repair
I
shop.
gotta check that
Yeah.
one. There was one I found on Amazon, and it was a British one, and it was someone would bring in a painting by like that they thought was like a Renoir, and it was like an auction house guy, and they would try to figure out if it really
Oh
was,
wow,
and
that's
they
neat.
would X-ray it and search the history of it and try to track the provenance of it and everything
Oh, that's
to
great.
figure out if it was really what these people were claiming it was.
Did it ever turn out to be an original?
I think a couple of I forgot which one. There was one, and they were. I think it was a. I don't know if it was like a Monet or something, and the Monet people would not authenticate it.
Oh
And
really?
these guys were like legit people, and they'd done all their research and stuff, and it was like it turned out to be like a whole political thing with like the
Ah,
people that were like on this board of the
oh,
that
is
were
it?
doing the I forgot what they call the catalog when they make the definitive catalog. I forgot what they call it,
Yeah,
but
yeah. So do I. Yeah. Oh, that's
it's
so interesting.
it was, yeah. The British do an excellent job at those just mundane,
Yeah.
boring things, turning them into with
Uh-huh.
the music and their accents. You're just
Oh
like,
yeah.
I will
Oh,
sit here for hours and watch
yeah.
this.
Yeah, well because they have the pottery, it's like a pottery challenge and it's done in I forget where it is, but it's beautiful old. It's a place where they used to make pottery. I think they still do, but it's like the place they would make it like 200 years ago. And so they have these people do these competitions, and of course they get into like their lives and stuff. But it's more. I just think I'm fascinated by the process and what people can do within like I hate that they only have 2 hours to do something, or it's probably fake. They probably have longer. But I do, yeah. The British are just, and I was really into British music. I always felt like they were, even though we probably had trends that they maybe copied, but I always felt like they did a better job at it. Was this there's something about Britain. Have you been to Europe?
I have no. I've been to Germany before,
Okay.
not Britain, but I was like in college. Probably that's when I was like in the Stone
Yeah,
Roses and
yeah. Same with me.
all those Blur and all
Uh-huh.
those
Same
like
with
the
me.
British bands.
Yeah, I used to get like there was Empire. There was some like magazine that was like that would have all the British bands, like their top
Okay,
50. And like it was like their version of Billboard, but it was always like Stone
okay.
Roses. It was Blur. It was always bands that were better. And I like Oasis, and it was a whole
Have you have you read the new Jan Werner book?
no.
The founder of Rolling
Yeah,
Stone
yeah, yeah.
magazine.
I didn't know I haven't read his book.
He's got a biography out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just fascinating when you said that about the Billboard uh, British version, because when I was like, that's right, they tried to do a British version of the Rolling Stone magazine. Um, but it's fascinating. Like if you're a music
I
guy,
am. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
um,
Let
and
me write that down. I didn't know he had a book.
I can remember being in high school buying like the big. We forget how big magazines were
Yeah,
for
Rolling Stone.
our generation.
I subscribed to Rolling Stone.
Yeah, well, he was talking about like the 10-year anniversary and like the 20-year anniversary with the big X's on the cover.
I think yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
And he's like, it was 270 pages. I mean, can you remember some of the Rolling Stone
Yeah,
magazines were huge,
thick, yes.
and they were, and I, like I said, I was a Arizona kid, and I would get like Surfing magazine,
Hmm.
and I can remember like when ads were, some of those magazines were huge, and all they were just ads.
Yeah, almost all, yeah. But it was
And
still
but you it was fascinating to.
we devoured them. We loved I
Oh yeah, we
loved
cut them up and put them all over our walls.
yeah.
And
Interesting how like newspapers and magazines, they were so important to us. It was so I love getting the newspaper. Do you still get the newspaper?
no, and I
I
used to,
never.
when I went to ASU, when I started college. Like I said, I was a horrible student, and I'd go to swim practice in the morning, and instead of going to class, I would go to the little deli across from the swimming pool, and I would get like ho hos and the New York Times and the Arizona Republic, and I would go to the library to the art section, and I would just take art books out and go through. I'd read the newspaper and then just go through
Oh, that's
art
great.
books that I liked, and not go to my Psych 101 class or my Bio 101.
I love that.
And then,
That's so funny. Have a great day.
all right,
Thank you
man.
so much. This was great.
Yeah,
Just great chat.
we need to get together and talk about books at some point.
Yes, definitely, for
We didn't
sure.
even touch on that.
Yeah, yeah. It's cool, cool. Yeah. We can do a part two someday too. That would be cool. But also just to chat.
Okay, cool.
All right, cool. Take it easy.
All right, man.
All right, take care. Bye.